My name's Fiona Cuthbert and I live in Alnwick.
What is the Alnwick Fair?
Can't hear her.
Nice and loud, Ellie.
What is the Alnwick Fair?
Alnwick Fair was a huge celebration at the end of June. It was always the last Sunday in June that it opened, and it was, well, I suppose a make-up medieval costumed fair, with hopefully the people of Alnwick taking a huge part in it.
What positives do you think that it brought to Alnwick?
Certainly brought a lot of people into the town, and hopefully it brought a lot of community spirit to the people who actually lived here.
Did it help the economy?
It must have helped the economy. Apparently, I remember one figure on the first opening Sunday. One year, there was 3,000 people clocked in to Alnwick who weren't residents watching the parade. So hopefully they spent some money as well.
What were your best memories of the Alnwick Fair?
Just the togetherness of it. The whole town seemed to come together. Both businesses, everybody dressed up. There was competitions, there were races, and the town just looked great.
Did you go with anybody?
I lived in Alnwick, so I was with my husband, I had 2 children, and I got involved as much as I could, making costumes, joining the parade, and lots of friends joined in too.
And why is it no longer a thing?
Why is it no longer there? I think like everything, they had issues with rules and regulations, health and safety. There was a big dunking area in the marketplace. That would never be allowed now. So a lot of rules and regulation took over. And I think as the committee grew older, and it's like, who is going to take over? And there wasn't anybody stepping up to do it.
Okay, let's have a little cut there. Little cut, pause. Nice and loud, cameras. Thank you.
Camera speed in? Yeah. That's what we're recording.
Susan.
Fiona Cuthbert, interview, take 2.
Lovely boy.
Nice set, get relaxer.
What was the weirdest costume that you saw?
Can't remember that I ever saw any weird costumes, actually. Everybody looked absolutely stupendous on the day and during the week as well, because obviously they wore costumes on the stalls in the market, in the businesses. I was always impressed by the ladies in the crinolines and their parasols, I must admit.
You mentioned the dunking thing. Can you elaborate on what that was?
Well, it's really from the historical thing of young damsels being dunked for witchcraft. So they had a huge yellow skip, which the fire service very kindly filled with water. That was set up at the bottom of the marketplace. And the young damsels were tried for witchcraft. Thankfully, all of them survived.
Can you tell us about the events and competitions that went on?
Ones I remember, there was always a sort of little cross-country come marathon, hardly a marathon, about 5 kilometres, something like that. A sedan race, which I believe went up and down Hotspur Street. There was Dwyle flonking, which I'm not even sure what that is, but that was definitely something that happened. And all this, of course, was supervised with a group of men called the militia, and they always wore green and red uniforms.
Are there any particular characters you remember being involved?
Well, yes, the militiamen were made up of various well-known men, of course, from the town. Any excuse to go around the pubs, really, and drag anybody in that they thought was misbehaving. So it was a bit of a pub crawl, really. And then the Lewis family were always prominent in everything in Alnwick. So Ken Lewis, I think, was one of the restarters of it. His wife Penny, and of course Peter Lewis was one of the militia. So they were quite a prominent family in it.
What was your favourite or happiest memory?
Oh, happiest memory, I think, was always going in the parade, getting ready on the Sunday, getting dressed up and joining the parade. I'm trying to think where it started. I always have this vision of walking past the library and down Hotspur Street, through the tower into the marketplace. We'd gone up Dispensary Street, so I wasn't sure where the beginning was, but I know it ended in the marketplace and there was a proclamation.
What do you miss the most about it?
Well, I left Alnwick in '86, so the fair was still going, but I probably think I left at the right time because I didn't want to see the ruination of it and the fact that it went downhill, which I think was sad. So really, I can only remember the good days, as it were.
What's your earliest memory?
Earliest memory would be making costumes for myself, my husband, and the 2 children, one of whom at one stage was still getting pushed around in a pram. But I did the pram up and everything. I mean, it was just, everybody took part wholeheartedly, 100%.
What kind of costumes did you make for your family and how did you make them?
Well, I remember dressing my son up and my husband up as a musketeer, and I can't quite remember what I wore at the time. I think I was in sort of kind of French shepherdess mode at that time. You must bear in mind as well that the costumes weren't historically correct. You might, as I say, get ladies in crinoline, you might get people, you know, as serfs from the Middle Ages, so there's a good spread of different costumes. I'm trying to think actually if they had a theme attached to it every year, but I'm not too sure about that.
Do you remember the last time you went and what do you remember of it?
The last time I went, I think, must have been the Musketeer year, where they were all, my family were dressed as the Musketeers. I had 2 of my nephews over from Canada, so even they took part. And it was just busy. It was lively. The town was filled. There's visitors. I just remembered as well that my daughter-in-law now, who went to school in Wallsend, remembers coming up with her school for one of the days a week as their trip out. So, I mean, it was well attended from all over. Newcastle, you know, North Tyneside and Northumberland. It wasn't just, you know, local people that came and enjoyed themselves.
Can you tell us about the WAM year?
The WAM year, well, that would have been the final year, and it was such a highlight of my calendar, the fair, that even though on the Saturday I went with a good friend, Alison, to the final Wham concert in Wembley. Yes, I did, folks. I know it's hard to believe, but I did it. So that would be 1986. We drove down to Wembley on the Saturday morning. We saw the Wham concert. We slept overnight at Watford Gap, and we were back on that Sunday for noon to join the parade in full costume and take part. So that was quite a special weekend to take part in the fair. And it was that important. It wasn't a case of, oh, well, we'll miss the fair, we needn't get back. We did.
Cut.
Fiona Cuthbert, interview, take 3.
Beautiful, thank you, sir.
Option. What did you dress the pram as?
Well, you've got to remember it was a big old-fashioned brown pram, not like the little dinky ones you have today. So I had ribbons on it, and I had a knitted lace shawl, and I placed that over the pram and just tried to hide as much as the boring brown bits as I could, and lots of lace and frills on the pram.
Would you like it to come back?
I think it would be great to bring the fair back. It certainly would bring the town together, So in one word, yes.
Can you ever see it coming back? And if it did, what do you think would change?
I think it would have to change because, as I said before about health and safety, there'd be a lot of restrictions on it. And whether it would come back, I don't know. I think the town is just too many, it's spread too far, it's developed too much with a lot of new houses, etc., etc. I don't think it has the same community spirit, and I think also people have very busy lives.
What do you think was the ultimate thing that caused it to end?
Apathy.